Welcome to the Taylor Emmett podcast. Honestly, not another boring legal podcast. I'm John Green, a personal injury solicitor at Taylor Emmett, and I'll be your host over this series of 6 podcast episodes. We're going to bring you the human stories behind what we hope will be interesting legal subjects. I'm going to be chatting to a smattering of experts from around the firm about what they do, who they are, and hopefully with a few smiles along the way. Right, let's meet today's guest. On today's podcast, we are joined by Ben Brown, our head of inheritance tracing. Hello, Ben.
Good morning. How are you?
Hi, very well, thank you. Very well.
Good.
Thanks for coming in.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Good. Yeah. So Ben's going to talk to us today about something that the firm does called inheritance tracing. Some people may know a lot about this, perhaps from the popular Channel 4 show Heir that I've been researching very deeply and can't stop watching now. Others might not know anything about it. So Ben, could you sort of give us a bit of a background about what is inheritance tracing? Yeah,
I think, as you say, maybe students and daytime TV watchers might be more familiar with this concept than others. But so we sort of sit within our private client probate team, but we're a sub-team within the main, what we call core probate. So the usual stuff you expect a probate department to deal with. So pre-death, as we say, wills, powers of attorney, estate planning. So we're after death, post-death, estate administration, but we tend to deal with primarily intestate estates.
So just explain what you mean by intestate.
Yeah, so someone dies without a will. So current stats suggest about 55% of the population die without a will. Still, many reasons for that. One, you would argue you wouldn't have an estate to leave, therefore you wouldn't make a will. Right. So that might explain a lot of the numbers. But there's still a large proportion of the population die without leaving a will, and that's where we come in. So we deal with intestate estates. Tends to be referrals from our genealogy contacts. So they work with local authorities, coroners, NHS trusts, whereby there's a death on their watch. Sadly, no family on the scene, no executor known to them, and they need someone to come on and to deal with the estate and organise the funeral, etc. So that's where the tracing agents will then contact the family next of kin. At that point, they'll say to the family, you may need some legal assistance, and then recommend one of their panel solicitors, such as Taylor Emmett, to get involved in the administration of the estate. That is only a sort of small part of what we do. So we tried to come up with a title for the team that was sort of a catch-all to cover everything that we do. It was quite difficult when you're trying to have a snappy 2-3 word sort of tag for the department. So inheritance tracing is intestacy, but it's a bit more than that. So we sort of step into territory like such as empty homes with local authorities where there's an empty home and they need to put it back into use. There's obviously quite a lot of pressure from central government to get the properties back into use. The councils are incentivised to put empty properties back into use with empty homes bonus. They get paid for every property that goes back into use. So they would then need some assistance in a sort of a wide range of situations where there's an empty property. So it could be a death where they're trying to find next of kin, persons entitled to deal with the estate. But it might be other reasons. It might be the property owner's gone missing. So that then strays into territory about Presumption of Death Act. So that's a bit of legislation that came in 2013, which basically helps now situations where there's someone gone missing for 7 years plus. And in the past, it was very difficult to deal with their estates. So they would be in limbo for many, many years, if not indefinitely. So this legislation came along and thankfully was very helpful in giving families basically a way to bring closure to the situation, whereby you get an order from the court saying this person hasn't been seen for many years, and that would then allow you to register their death and then deal with the estate thereafter.
So if someone has disappeared and they've not been traced for 7 years, the legal presumption is that they've died?
Yes.
Okay.
So you've got to bring...
just got in a canoe and sailed off to South America like that guy did.
Yeah, so you'd have to bring strong evidence to convince a court that the person is actually deceased. But yeah, I mean, 7 years is the starting point. They haven't been seen. We've done quite a lot of cases where there's been, missing persons, and the family's been, I suppose there's an emotional side to it as well, which, obviously very difficult to get closure without an actual death certificate and some endpoint. So that's where the court order brings not just legal sort of endpoint, but also I think for the family, the closure as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said something about inquiry agents, and is that like a private investigator?
So they tend to be they will like to be called genealogists. So,
Right.
Obviously looking at birth, death, marriage records.
Sounds a lot better, doesn't it? Genealogist.
Yeah. The term heir hunters, obviously, you've mentioned the TV programme on Channel 4, and I think some of them don't like that particular tag.
I'm not surprised because I've watched it. I'm not.
Yeah, but they're good at what they do. The people we work with are reputable companies, have been around a long time, provide a good service. I mean, you've got to think about it from the local authority's point of view that they just don't have the time, the resources, the expertise in some situations to actually go and find family and next of kin.
Yeah.
Hence, they provide a much needed service to local authorities.
So do you not get involved so much in digging through family trees and looking at birth certificates and death certificates and all that kind of thing?
We do that as well.
Right.
We tend to sort of ask the genealogists to do a lot of the work because that's their line of work. They're the experts.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll have cases where the family don't want to use their services, so they prove their own claims, and we're checking birth, death, marriage records. We're checking family trees to make sure everything's accurate in terms of distribution. Sometimes you can have quite large family trees. I mean, I think my record was about 250 beneficiaries on one estate.
Ooh.
So it was a huge tree that sort of went round my complete room, stuck on the wall to try and, get all the numbers together for the distribution. So it's been quite
so they
difficult.
all got 20p each?
Exactly. Yeah. Some ended up, I think it was £5-6, the lowest amount.
Oh,
so
you'd be gutted, wouldn't you, if you got a call? You've got a relative you've never heard of who's left you something in your estate.
Yeah.
Here's £6. Oh.
But we do have the ones where they get large sums of money, smaller number of beneficiaries.
Yeah.
A lot of cases never met the deceased, didn't know them, had no kind of relationship with them, so completely out of the blue.
So you ring them up and it's like the National Lottery are calling.
Pretty much.
We've got some good news for you.
Yeah.
So it's at the point you ring them up, is it just to sort of let them know that you're dealing with it, or is it to say, guess what, give us your bank details?
Yeah, I mean, the early stages, there's a lot of caveats because obviously there could be a will, and I think there's about maybe 1 in 10 cases we do find a will.
Oh, so you do a load of work and it goes nowhere because there's a will?
Yeah, so we always do a will search. We check with local law firms, will writers, inquire with friends, family, usual places, banks, etc.
Do you have to publish it in the local newspaper and that sort of thing, like you see sometimes we're searching for an estate?
Yeah, so we always advertise with creditors, local paper, London Gazette. You've probably seen them, maybe a small paragraph that goes in there to contact the law firm if you've got.
Do you ever get any claims. People? Do people even read those?
Quite a lot, yeah.
Oh, they do.
Quite a lot, yeah. You tend to find also that property buying companies tend to monitor them as well, so they'll want to get their offer in first before anyone else.
Get a nice cheap deal.
Well, they think so, but obviously we make sure that doesn't happen. But
that's your job, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the estates don't end up, turning into an intestacy. There's a will. It could be an insolvent estate. We do find sometimes.
Right.
Other potential, claims that exist that we didn't know about initially. The problem we have is that the family have very limited knowledge of the deceased on a lot of our cases because we're talking very distant family. It could be, first cousin once removed, let's say, of the deceased, and then you're sort of piecing everything together from the beginning. What assets did they have? What liabilities? Potential wills, etc. And it's a bit of a jigsaw that you need to put together.
And then right at the last minute, you could find out about an illegitimate child that throws it all into.
Yeah, we just had one recently, actually, with that, very, very situation. So some of them, involve a lot of DNA testing as well, where there's question marks over, paternity or whatever, and we're trying to establish that through DNA testing.
So, I mean, you must have come across some family members who've got really into it, because just speaking from my own perspective, my mum is currently obsessed with Ancestry online. She keeps going, oh, did you know about your Uncle Bernard from West Yorkshire? It's like, yeah, I met him. Anyway, but do you get clients or potential beneficiaries who get involved and they want to do the research and help you with it, or do they tend to be a bit more standoffish?
I think majority, let you get on with the job, but there are a few, amateur genealogists who like to do their own thing, and as you say, ancestry is a big thing now for people, and it includes, DNA testing on some of the trees as well. So
you actually have to get people in and do a DNA test. Well, obviously you're not doing it, but you send them off to a lab or what have you. Yeah,
we had one, it was last year, where it was a really sad situation where I think it was known within certain circles this gentleman was the deceased son, but he didn't know that fact, unfortunately. But he wasn't, Dad wasn't on the birth certificate. So it was then a case of looking at DNA testing, but we only got instructed on the day of the funeral that was being organised by a local authority. So in terms of getting a sample from the deceased, a tissue sample, it was really, a case of we need to stop this funeral and we need to get the sample pretty quickly. So very, very sad. awful situation to be in, but the only possible chance of getting the DNA test done was to get a sample from the deceased. So we had to get an injunction out to stop the funeral.
Ooh. So you had to get a judge to rubber stamp it?
Yeah, because the local authority didn't have any knowledge of purported son, and obviously we were trying to get them to see sense to put a stop to it. They wanted to go ahead, so we had to get an injunction to say, look, we need a bit more time. Managed to get that, and then luckily we got the sample through a pathologist. That went off to the lab. DNA testing proved that our client was actually the son of the deceased, so luckily it was a good outcome.
A sad situation had a reasonably happy ending.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of sadness attached to the fact that they didn't know about it for
never met him.
40 plus years and never had any kind of relationship with the deceased, but at least there was, I suppose, out there in the open for him to deal with the conclusion, and obviously the inheritance passed to him as well, which wasn't the main driving force for him, but obviously for us we had to clarify.
I suppose it softened the blow a bit though, didn't it?
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
So
sad.
when you say like certain groups knew about this, are we talking whispers in the pub or?
Yeah, and certain members of close family who probably had an idea.
Did he look like him?
That was the thing, yeah. When you looked at the photographs, it was pretty obvious.
Right.
But
yeah.
I suppose for him, he never sort of made that.
Well, he wouldn't have known, would he?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that poor guy.
So yeah, really sad. But I think I suppose, like you say, a positive outcome.
So there must be other things that come in. Like, do you sometimes find that you might have people in different countries? Are you crossing borders with your searches? That must pose extra challenges.
Yeah, we're lucky. We have a really good network of researchers and agents and other lawyers that we use in different jurisdictions. So we built up a good network over the last 10 years or so. But there are occasions where records simply don't exist. In certain countries, it's very, very difficult to get records unless you're a member of the family, or the records simply don't exist. And then you're trying to gather enough evidence to prove the link to the deceased. But in some cases, it's very, very difficult.
Do you not just think about jumping on a flight, putting it on expenses? And
that would be nice, yeah. I'm not sure I'll get them past the equity.
You'll never get past HR.
I'll give it a try next time. But the researchers do go out there. I mean, been many cases where they've been on a flight to, the Bahamas, wherever it may be, and meeting with family on the ground to try and get local records.
Poor guy having to go to the Bahamas.
I know.
That's an awful job. I need to get in on this. So, what's the most kind of fascinating case that you've worked on, would you say?
Wow, there's been so many. I mean, typical story is the one getting the big inheritance. So we've had cases where we pay, several £1 million to one beneficiary just completely out of the blue.
Wow. And
it's life-changing sums of money we're talking about here. So you can make a huge difference to.
Are you making those phone calls to people?
Yeah, I mean, we're making the phone call with the amount because we're sending out the accounts with the numbers on. So, but the genealogist may make the first contact, but there's always, like I say, heavy caveats involved in any amounts that are talked about at the early stages. Sure. But when they get the accounts with the penny record of what's there, they can see the final number. So it's life-changing.
Life-changed in one phone call. Well, a couple of phone calls potentially. That's amazing. That is amazing.
But we've had loads of interesting cases. I mean, so many. There was one where chap was high-ranking civil servant, shall we say, and he went missing in suspicious circumstances many, many years ago. So his car left at some beauty spot down south, and keys were in the car, all his belongings, no trace of him whatsoever. And then the family obviously were trying to appeal for any information about his whereabouts. It made national news, and sadly no links whatsoever. Police came to a dead end. So the case went pretty much cold for many years. And then I mentioned about the presumption of death legislation that came in 2013, 2014. So that then obviously allowed us to make an application to get the death registered formally, so that the family could get some closure. But it was really sad story in the family. It never got over what had happened with son, but that gave them some closure. So that was a nice outcome for them. We've had cases where there's been council have been involved or local authority have been dealing with empty property. The person's gone missing. We had one case where the chap went missing in 1974, I think it was, and the council took possession of the property many years later. So it was a family home. Our client lived there with his mum and dad for until mum sadly passed away in 2003, and this was his family home. But unfortunately, because dad disappeared and there was no death certificate, he couldn't prove his entitlement to the property. So he couldn't get probate, couldn't deal with the estate. and the council said, look, we can't leave the property empty. It's becoming an issue for us now because we need to get it back into use. So the council took possession of the property through Empty Dwelling Management Order, EDMO, which allows them to rent the property out, and the son had to leave the property and unfortunately couldn't find anywhere to live, so I think was homeless for quite a long period of time. And then going back to presumption of death again, but this legislation came in, allowed him to say, look, Dad's been missing since the 1970s, provided sufficient evidence to the court to convince them that this person has sadly passed away, and he was able to deal with Dad's estate and then Mum's estate and then get possession of the property.
Oh, so he was able to go back to
so
the
eventually
family
went
home.
back into the family home. So it was a really nice outcome for him. So yeah, he was homeless for many years, temporary accommodation, and it was a really sad story. And he was sort of walking past the family home almost every day and seeing someone else living in his family home. And the council had, legal right to do this. It's not a criticism of them.
No.
But for him, it was obviously a very difficult situation. But then managed to get the property back in to his possession. He's still living there now, I believe. So that's good.
Well, we like a happy ending.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. So, do you ever get approached by people who suspect they might be a potential heir and they need your help to trace? They think, well, I think this person's died. I may be entitled to inherit under this will. Is that the sort of thing where you would help, or do you tend to see it from the other side where the person's already died and you're just looking for beneficiaries?
We do get a lot of inquiries with people saying maybe an advert on social media, hospital looking for appeal for family next of kin. Tends to be a common one, or police sometimes put something out there on social media or in the press where they'll come to us and say, look, I think I'm entitled, but I need someone to help prove my claim. So then we're obviously gathering the certificates to prove the link to the deceased. We're obviously trying to make inquiries as to the circumstances surrounding the estate, because sometimes it might just be an appeal for family, but there's a will out there, and there's another reason for family to come forward, not just to benefit from the estate. So, but yeah, we see it from both sides.
And I guess potentially you might have people finding out about other family members that are alive that they didn't know anything about, so they could be meeting up with other members of their family that they had no idea about. Yeah,
we get a lot of requests for copies of the family tree in the hope that the family can reconnect in a lot of situations. And it's quite a common, I suppose, positive outcome from what we do. Brings the family back together.
Bit more exciting at Christmas, isn't it?
Yeah. It's very difficult. I think when you're talking about, cousins and more distant family, I mean, most people are probably the same, that you only see certain family members at, weddings, funerals. And
if I can help it.
Yeah, exactly.
Hope they're not listening to this. So, what are the biggest problems that you face in your line of work at the moment?
The biggest thing for us at the moment is fraud. So we have we have quite a few cases with property fraud. So we believe there's quite a sophisticated sort of organisation behind this, but we see cases all the time where there's been a property that's been stood empty, or an estate that hasn't been administered for quite some time, and the estates and the properties appear to be targeted, where there's a claim for ID fraud on the property owner. So we have cases where there's been break-ins at the deceased property, taking financial papers which would help with any attempt at ID fraud, where they're trying to claim that they are the property owner to deal with the sales. We've quite a few situations there. We've had to put a stop to the property sales. We've also had probate fraud, where the probate's been taken out by someone who isn't entitled to a grant, or on one case recently that's still ongoing, where the person doesn't exist. The problem we have is that the probate registry don't run ID checks, as a matter of course. So if someone applies for probate and claims to be the person entitled, there's no real checks done on their identity and their relationship to the deceased in a lot of cases. So it is an area which is open to fraudulent applications for probate, and it's very difficult to police it. So one thing I would recommend to anyone listening to this is to set up a property alert. That's not just for deceased properties, that's for your own property as well. So it's a free service from the Land Registry. If you go to the Land Registry website, there's a property alert service on there. Easy to sign up with your email address. You put property address details in, and any activity on that property, you'll get an alert from the Land Registry. So the hope is that
if someone tries to sell it or take a mortgage out on it, you find out about that before it happens.
You get an alert. Oh. Yeah, and then you'd be able to put a stop to it, hopefully, in time. But it's a big problem for us. And you can put anti-fraud restrictions on properties. When it's your own property, it's not difficult, but when it's a deceased property, we're acting in cases where we may not have a grant of probate, like administration, so it's difficult for us to get any kind of restrictions on the title to stop the fraud. But it's becoming a big problem. I would say the last 5 years especially, we've seen a big increase in cases.
Oh, these criminals.
Yeah.
Is there no end to their nefarious activities? Well, let's say you've got someone who thinks they might have a claim to an estate or unclaimed assets. What advice could you give them? What would you advise to potential listeners in that situation?
I think I would always do a will search. I think that's first and foremost. It's sensible to do that now. There isn't a central register of wills as such. There's a private company called Certainty who they claim, I think, about 2/3 of law firms that use their service, thereabouts. So we'd always search with the National Register with Certainty. We'd search the local law firms, will writers, make inquiries on the ground, searching last known address, personal papers. So I think you need to rule out the possibility of a will, and that's the first point. You're then trying to establish the value of the estate, because if it's an insolvent estate, the family may not want to be involved. It may be best for the creditors to deal with the estate in that situation. Mm-hmm. So you wanted to find out what assets are there, what liabilities they've got. So there's really good searches that exist now. So the company that we use called Estate Search, a bit of a plug for them, but they're probably the best search provider that exists for deceased estates, in my opinion. So they'll search for any institutions in the UK for any potential assets. Any liabilities, you get a credit report, so you look for any loans, credit cards, etc. to make sure the estate's solvent. You've now got digital asset searches, which is a big thing for us because we struggle with no paperwork to find digital assets. Crypto is the obvious one, but there's also the online banking accounts that may exist that we don't know about without the paperwork. Mm-hmm. So the really good searches that exist now to establish the assets and liabilities. I would always get a family tree check done by a genealogist. So some of the companies that we work with will do a free check. And you want to make sure there's no other relatives entitled in priority to the person that is applying for the grant of administration, because there could be, children you didn't know about, there could be spouses that exist, civil partners, etc. Yeah. So it's always worth having that check done. Always do the Section 27 notices in the local paper and the Gazette, which I've mentioned. So any potential creditors, they've got a chance to come forward. Mm-hmm. That gives you protection then down the line. Once the estate's distributed, you've got some protection. We always recommend insurance. So there's different policies that exist out there. So missing beneficiary insurance is the common one, that the genealogist can only go so far. If someone isn't on a birth record, if someone's overseas, it's very difficult to confirm if they're actually going to, be on the family tree, ultimately. So the insurance is there to protect the administrator, that if there is a potential claim after distribution, that they're covered.
Oh, so if someone else comes along that might have a better claim, the insurers will sort that out for them. Yeah,
or it could be a creditor, it could be a will that turns up, so we get missing will cover. You can
insure anything, can't you?
Yeah, there's a comfort cover policy that's sort of really comprehensive cover for everything, and so I'd always recommend that, where you don't have detailed knowledge about the deceased and the affairs. Mm-hmm. And in that situation, probably it's best to instruct a professional to deal with the estate administration, purely because of the risk involved. It's a higher risk case. It's not a probate where you've got a will. It's a close member of family. Everything's clear cut. It's much more complex.
So what's the best way for a potential client to get in touch with you? Is it come through the website or give you a ring? Or
Yeah, I think we're quite an approachable bunch, so maybe a bit old-fashioned in some circles, but pick up the phone, speak to us. We don't bite. We're happy to give free initial consultations on any case. We are also available online, email, social media, all the usual channels.
All that good stuff.
All the good stuff, yeah.
Well, Ben, thank you very much. It's been fascinating. Really appreciate your time.
No problem.
And, I know a lot more about this, so hopefully our listeners will too.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Thanks very much for listening. We hope you found it useful and informative. If you'd like to learn more about any of the subjects we've touched upon, we've handpicked some free resources for you, which we will put in the show notes. There's also loads of info on our website, so head over to tayloremmett.co.uk. If something we've spoken about today has given you a burning desire to speak to a solicitor, and let's face it, why wouldn't it have? Then we'd love to speak to you. Head over to the website again, that's tayloremmett.co.uk for more information. You'll find all our contact details right there, so give us a shout. We're lovely, I promise.